Okay. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Angela Carr Patterson, your global life and success strategist and founder of the Fatherless Daughters Network. I'm here with Vanessa Dearborne, and Vanessa was one of the authors in our recent book, anthology book, The Journey to Being a Fatherless Daughter. And her story is just so amazing, and we have her here so we can talk about her story, talk about her journey, and why she was a fatherless daughter, and she's going to share some nuggets that could perhaps help you. I am so excited as I am able to present information and elevate the awareness of the impact that fatherlessness has on a female's life, but also help to give them tools to redefine who they are beyond their fatherlessness, to reclaim their value and worth by actualizing the power of self-love and rewriting a new narrative for their lives to give them a hope for a future beyond fatherlessness. And that really is our goal and our aim, to help women to flourish beyond fatherlessness. We have a goal of reaching 1 million women over the next 5 years to give them hope and happiness beyond their fatherlessness. So let's get into the interview and talk with Vanessa. Vanessa, we're so glad to have you here. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here finally.
I know, right?
We were able to schedule some time, so I'm so thankful and blessed to be here today. My name is Vanessa. You'll see Vanessa New Church, but everybody knows me by Vanessa Dearborne. And I have I call it a ministry called My Dearborn Child, and it is to empower, encourage, and highlight the strengths of fatherless daughters.
Great, great. And I love the name. What is it, newborn child?
Dearborn. It should be, put the new in the, I like that. That's a prophetic word. I'm going to receive that right now.
Okay, that is really cool. Newborn child. Yeah, I like that. I like that. Maybe you find that might be your next book.
Right. No, it's Dearborn because my middle name is Dearborn. My father named me, and my mom was like, "Why are you going to name her that? That's a crazy name. They have a city in Michigan named Dearborn. Like, why would you do that?" And he said it means my dear-born child.
Oh, I love that.
And so, as kind of like a nod to him, may he rest in peace, I decided to name it My Dearborn Child. And also it's kind of a play on words with saying that I was dear to my father and we are dear to our Heavenly Father. So that's why it's called My Dearborn Child.
Okay. Well, we have you're chapter 5 in the book.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't know, an anthology book is a compilation of stories that we put together in one book, and that has a theme. It's based on the model of the Chicken Soup for the Soul. That was the first series of anthology books, and it just kind of took fire. And so this one is The Journey to Being a Fatherless Daughter, and she's chapter number 5, and the title of your story is Dear to Him. Now, you start out just right out the gate saying that I knew I wasn't a lesbian, but my body never agreed with my thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be loved, and I was determined to get it. So let's talk about that. You wanted to be loved. That's a common thread with fatherless daughters, because we walk through life not feeling love, because a girl learns to love herself through the love she sees reflected back to her in her father's eyes. And if that's flawed in any way, then she's going through life trying to find that.
Well, my personal story, so I was involved in lesbian relationships off and on, more so on than off, for 17 years. And so when I say that my body never agreed with my thoughts, I didn't think I was really a lesbian, but I was going to do what I wanted to do because I wanted to be comforted. I wanted to be pleased. I would date women who more gender appeared to be masculine. And so I was looking for my father in these women. I had no idea that that's what I was doing at the time. But they would buy me things like, well, a particular young lady that I was with, when my father would promise to buy me something and he didn't come through and buy it or come see me, she would purchase it. So that was like the open door. So it was just basically, you know, just me getting that void filled.
Yeah, yeah, I get that. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and you probably felt safer getting it from women than you did from men.
Thank you. Yes, that part too. The safety of it all. I did endure sexual abuse when I was younger, so definitely safety was like a primary component because your father is supposed to provide that safety for you, that protection. And so that wasn't there at the time because of his drug addiction. So he was kind of like in and out, in and out. But she was something that was constant and consistent.
Yeah. Okay. So, and then as which the story goes, you it's something that we do, and I call it armoring ourselves. I know I was big at that, you know, trying to help others heal their lives and trying to help others be better. I've always loved self-help books. Even when I was in elementary school, I would check out the how-to books. And so it just was, I knew that was part of my purpose, but it's kind of difficult to do when you're dealing with your own emotional roller coaster. But oftentimes we can get caught up in helping other people. And that's the way we armor and hide ourselves without having to deal with our own issues. And you talk about how you prided yourself in trying to help others while being emotionally broken yourself.
Oh, yeah. So little did I know that I was attracted to pain. I was attracted to brokenness. The more broken you were, the more I wanted to be with you to try to fix those things because I felt like, and most of the individuals that I dated, they had father issues. I'm trying to fix a problem within them that I was dealing with, unbeknownst to me. My father and I had a great relationship. So it was kind of like this duality where it's like, okay, you have a great relationship, but he's not around. How could they coexist? And so because I thought I had a great relationship with my father, I'm like, well, let me help these girls with their issues. Let me even help some men at times. Let me help them. They have father issues too, or they have brokenness or rejection. That's what it was. The root of it all was rejection. And I even tried to rescue my dad. He's the first person that I tried to save because I recognized that he struggled so much with the pain that he had from his childhood, the trauma that he had. He had substance use issues, but he was such a good man and he loved me like undoubtedly he loved me. I was his baby. And so as a young child, I'm watching my father struggle. I'm seeing him try to be the best father he can be while battling this addiction. And so I found myself trying to call around the rehabs to get him into rehabs. I was away at college. I would call home and ask my mom, is dad home? Did he come home? And she's like, no, I haven't seen him. So I'm calling all these different rehab centers. So when he did come back, I'm calling him with a list of phone numbers that he can call. Like I'm being a social worker before I became an actual social worker, right? Like I was working and it just never worked because it wasn't my job to do. It was the inner work that he had to do, and only God could do those things. But I found myself trying to rescue everybody. It got to the point where I needed rescuing. I was drowning in my own pain and nobody could even recognize how hurt I was.
And that's common, you know, because it is a form of hiding. If I organize my life around everybody else and be that for everybody else, then I don't have to really shine the spotlight on what's going on with me.
Yes.
So it's a form of armoring and hiding. And
yes.
So we do that really easy. And so, but one of the things I have recognized in this work in this space of work that I've been doing is that oftentimes a lot of people don't realize that they are living out the patterns of a fatherless daughter. And there have been times that I've done interviews on television and radio, and the interviewer is saying, well, tell me, you know, I had a great relationship with my father, but let's talk about those of you who are fatherless. And so when I really break down the definition of a fatherless daughter and I start elevating the awareness, then there have been times that I've sat and watched the interviewer eyes well up with tears and said, oh my God, that is my story. And so sometimes your father can be in the home with you and think that you're receiving the things that he's supposed to give to you, and they're not there until someone elevates the awareness, and then you understand, oh, this is why I do this. Oh, this is why I do that. And it's not about blame. It's about awareness, because awareness is key, and it gives us the ability to make a new choice and to make new choices. So we must become aware that this is a missing element in our lives. Well, so if we, you know, as you're part of the Fatherless Daughters Network as one of the advocates, and so our definition of a fatherless daughter is a female who grew up with an unattached, unavailable, or absent father, or you had a flawed relationship with your father. And if you're in that category at all, then you will begin to live out many of the patterns that are associated with fatherlessness. And you may not be aware. It may be in your blind spot until someone brings it to light. And that's what you do, and you do it very well.
Thank you so much.
And so you said I think you were in church, and the prophet revealed to you that you had daddy issues. So I had to really hit you, because you walking around thinking, me and my dad good. I'm good. Good daddy. I don't have any daddy issues. And so when that hit you, when that awareness came, what did you do?
Oh my goodness. So my father has been deceased for 10 years, and I literally had my father on a pedestal. I just that was my buddy. He's my heart. And so I'm in church, and so the apostle calls me up, and he's like talking to me, and he's like, you know, can I give you a hug? May I give you a hug? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And he was like, you know, I want to give you the hug of a father, because you didn't have your father wasn't available. And I just broke down crying, because I'm like, what is he talking about? But in my heart, I kind of felt like, this is true. It was rough. I mean, it was that Oprah aha moment, because I never would have thought that I had father wounds at all. Even though he was on drugs, even though he didn't show up to some of my events, even though he stole from me to go get drugs, you know, but he was there. He showed up to my suspension meetings. He didn't believe in beating me because he got beat. Like he did other things to counteract that. So I'm thinking this is normal. The dysfunction became normal. But when he said, your father was, I'm like, what? Wow. But then that's when God started doing the soul surgery. He had to get down on the inside of me, and he started pulling those things, and they were coming to the surface. And he brought one of the things that I talked about, is about the first time that my father rejected me. And I didn't know it was rejection at the time, but then I'm like, oh, wow. That was the root of it all, that day that he rejected me. So now, if a certain person I was interested in, if they didn't want to be bothered with me, it would hurt me deeper than the normal. I had friends who could get over breakups and move on. But for me, I mean, it lingered for a long time. I struggled because that root of rejection was already there from my father.
Yeah, yeah. And so it's the things that some people can just let slide, with us, we internalize it deeply because it's a super trigger. It becomes a super trigger, and it opens up those unhealed wounds that we have. And And I don't want people to listen to this interview and think that because you do the work that you're never going to be impacted by this. This is a lifelong journey. And so you continue to do the work. And the difference is once you are aware that this exists and you're aware and you willing to go through the process to heal, there can be times you look up and there's a trigger comes and it wakes up a wound that's been kind of laying dormant. So the
Yes.
measure of your transformation is not that all your wounds are healed and
Right.
but the real measure of your transformation is how seldom they now show up. And so so you gain the skill sets, is which you do and we do at the Fatherless Daughters Network, is to help people to gain the skill sets, to go through the process of healing, to go through the process of acknowledging and truth telling. And this is never about bashing fathers, you know. It's never about bashing your dad, because your dad had his own story. And
Yes.
you know that his addiction, without his addiction, he probably would have been a different man. So he had his own story. He was injured himself by somebody, no doubt, that was injured and passed those injuries on to you. And so that's why it's imperative that we share our stories, and you're courageous with all the other women to share your stories, because within your stories you're able to, there's freedom in sharing your story for yourself, but you also offer freedom for so many other people.
Yes.
So
So true.
I know you talked about let's talk about how I know you talked about rejection, and that was something that ran rampant for you. Talk about rejection. And you say, I define rejection as not accepting a person, thing, and even an opinion or ideology. I remember the first time feeling rejected by my father. Tell us about that.
Oh, I remember that day clearly. So I remember my dad, he actually worked across the street from my high school. And so when he got paid on Fridays, he was supposed to give me allowance. But every time, by the time that I got outside, he was gone. So I remember this one Friday, he promised, he's like, I promise you, right after school, we're going to go. And so I walked over to his job, and someone picked us up in a car and they took us to a check cashing place. And so he gave me the money, and I didn't know this man. I didn't know who this was, but we pull up outside of my house, and I'm getting out of the car to go back in the house. And I'm like, and I just felt it in my spirit, even at like 15, 16. I'm like, Dad, come on. And he's not getting out the car. He's like, no, I'll be back. And I'm like, no, come on. I'm literally pulling and crying because I know what this is. I know who this is. I know where you're going. I know I'm not going to see you for at least 3 days per usual. And he was like, I'll be back. And he never got out the car. And I put in here that I felt that he was rejecting me. But in actuality, I said that he was rejecting himself. No, I said I knew I wouldn't see my father for at least 3 days. I felt he chose the drugs over me, but in reality, he chose drugs over himself. So he didn't care about himself enough to choose himself at that time. And so I'm feeling like, he's rejecting me, he's not coming in, but it's really like, how can you expect a person to care about you when they clearly don't care about themselves at the time? But that was the day that I felt like he couldn't pick me. I wasn't enough that he couldn't pick me. It wasn't enough that he couldn't stay home. And so that can linger into relationships. When you're with somebody and say the person cheats on you, you feel like, why can't you pick me? Why, it's between me and this other person. What is it about them that's so great that you can't stay here? You don't want to be here. What was it so great about drugs that you didn't want to stay with your daughter? So it was a lot of revelation, but a lot of also understanding of the situation, understanding of who he was and what he was going through and what voids he was trying to fill. And I feel like once you get an understanding of what your father may have been through, not making an excuse, I always like to say, not making an excuse, but having an understanding, you can even have some sympathy for them or even empathy if you've done something or if you've gone through something, and you can kind of have an open heart and understanding like, okay, it's personal, but let me not take it personal because it's way bigger than me.
Yeah, yeah, and that's one of the things that we have to understand, that our dads had their own stories. It's
Mm-hmm.
not our fault that they rejected us or abandoned us, but their story, and sometimes understanding their story helps you to heal and understand that it wasn't really about you, it was about them and their inability, because it's an unkind thing to ask someone to do for you what they're incapable of doing. And so his addiction was stronger than his will
Yes.
to love you. And so and addictions are really, really strong. They're evil thing, and regardless
Yes.
if it's drugs or if it's sex, whatever it is, it takes a toll on a person. And most people that fall into addictions, they're hurting. They really are hurting people, and so hurt people hurt other people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that as we, I've heard a lot of women say, "I'll never forgive my father," and I understand that, but when you really you can't really love a person till you understand them, and when you get some understanding, it will soften those wounds, because you gotta soften the edges of those wounds. We can't just release them and let them go, because they come back. It's until we go through those wounds and feel that pain and understand it and get the infection out. The infection was, he was an addict. That was the infection. And once you can remove the infection, which removed understanding that he was an addict, then it softens your wound and the wound begins to heal, because then you can separate the man from the addiction. My
Mm-hmm.
father was a good man. The addiction was not. The addiction made him become something that he really
Yes.
originally wasn't. And that helps the healing process. It doesn't let him off the hook.
Right.
You may not be able to be in union with him as he continues with the addiction, but you can forgive, love, acceptance, and forgiveness. And that's the journey that we all talk about in the Fatherless Daughters Network. This is a journey of love, acceptance, and forgiveness. And that's more for you than it is for him.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. That's true. That's true. I mean, because my father's gone, so to walk around with unforgiveness and he's no longer here. I mean, there are going to be times when you're never going to get an apology from a person, and so are you going to carry that unforgiveness your whole entire life? Are you going to let it fester and rot? Because we know what happens when things fester and rot. They begin to stink. They smell. So now I got a bad attitude, right? I don't know how to, I'm married now. So, but before I don't know how to even receive anybody, because my attitude stinks, because I think you're just like this person and like that person. And, it becomes a cyclical thing. And so I was determined that I didn't want to stink anymore. I didn't want to rot. I wanted to have a sweet aroma about me, because yes, hurt people, but restored people restore. And it's my purpose to restore other young ladies. And, you might not be a completely healed and whole, but I also want to highlight the root of some things, because there are young girls and women alike who don't realize that the root of a lot of what's going on with them is the rejection, is the father issues, is the father wounds. So I just want to bring it to their attention.
Yeah.
Because, and I have been, and it's like, you know what? I never thought about it. They're having that aha moment. Like, I never considered that. Wow. Yeah. My father, he works all the time. He's home. He works all the time, but you're right. He doesn't even talk to me. He's always asleep.
Yeah. And those are very good men. And in our dad's, in a lot of men's defense, no one told them. They were, especially if you're my generation, which is, 50, 60s, 50, 60-year-old generation, the currency in the relationship was that daddy went to work, daddy made sure there was a shelter, there was food, and there was clothing. And that's all that was required. And that he came home at night. That was it. That was it. The dealing with the children and the time spent was with mom. And
Yeah.
if he did deal with any children, it was the sons where he threw a ball with them or something like that. It wasn't with his girls, especially once that girl hit puberty. He didn't know what to do with her. And so he backed off and put her into mom's hand. And the girl filtered it as daddy no longer loves me. He's rejected me. I've gone from sitting on his lap to being daddy's little girl to daddy just kind of distancing himself because no one told him that his daughter needed 4 things from him: his protection, his to give her safety, his provision to make her feel secure that her needs could be met, his presence so that she felt significant, and his praise so that she had a sense of self-worth. And what your daughter needs from you is totally different from what your son needs from you. And in their defense, no one has taught them that. And
right.
We're now in maybe 10, 15 years in where we're having these conversations to end. And the great thing about it is because we're having these with all the fatherhood initiative programs that are out there, I've read that research has shown that Black fathers are leading now in the numbers when it comes to engaging with their children now. And so that is just, I'm hopeful. I'm very hopeful because the men are now seeing that it's more needed from them than just working and providing the food and the shelter and the clothing, that their children really need them. But we're just, like I say, 10, 15 years into this.
Right. That's so true. One of my favorite, I actually, I was a guest speaker at for an organization. It was through like Fathers Inc. And it was men who were previously incarcerated, just different, maybe struggling with addiction, just various issues. But all these men were in the room. And I spoke to them. I shared my fatherless story, my father wounds, all of that. And then the latter part, I highlighted what it looks like to re-engage your daughter. If I said, is there anybody in the room who has daughters? Most of them rose their hand. I said, I'm in the right room. And so I said, if you have a daughter and she's not talking to you, and you keep trying, she's like, no. I said, she's rejecting you because you rejected her. But instead of saying, you know what, forget it, I'm not going to try anymore, you need to go harder. I encouraged them. I said, because she wants to know that you mean it, that you're being consistent. I said, if you are with your daughter, say, oh yeah, I have my daughter all the time, but you're on your cell phone, you're constantly on Instagram, and you're not spending time with your daughter. She's just next to you, but that's not quality time. This is what quality time looks like. So I had to break those things down. And so they came up to me after and was like, you know what, I really appreciate you giving those nuggets there, because this guy was like, I really thought I'd spend time with my daughter because I get her every weekend. But yeah, I do be on my phone a lot. Like, yeah.
Yeah, because you're not engaging with her. She's just there occupying space, but you're still ignoring her, and you're teaching her that this is how a man treats a woman.
Right.
And so, and as fathers and daughters, we filter everything through that abandonment and rejection until we learn to heal. Because I remember my husband would say things to me, and I would kind of pop off back, because we can pop back real quick. And he said, and I realized that I was filtering what he was saying through the lens of fatherlessness, because that's those defenses that we have. And so I asked him, I say, you know, when I'm working on a project and I'm working really hard and I'm getting tired, I said, I'm not as quick to understand what's going on, so I'll clap back. So all what I need you to do, instead of retreating or coming back at me, say to me, how did you get that out of what I just said? And when
Mm.
he says that, I'm like, oh, that's just that old daddy wound trying to show up, you know. So now,
Yeah.
if I'm really, really tired, I can be a little sensitive when I'm real tired. So I try to make sure I get my proper rest. But on those occasions, he'll say something and I'm like, and he said, how did you, before I said, he said, how did you get that out of what I just said? And that brings me right back. So you have to have some things, some structures in place to help you to, because this has been a core issue for us. And it's a lifelong core issue that you continue to work to do the work. You really, I love this. You said, you know, you talked about, well, I believe that as fathers, daughters, we share a common pain. We know rejection, abandonment, anger, bitterness, and depression. And anger is the hallmark of it. And it really is just repressed pain, but it shows up as anger and a flawed identity. And see, your identity is our philosophy is that you have a flawed identity when you're fatherless, because you get your identity through your father. And so for us, we, based on the scripture when God said, I knew you before I formed you in your mother's womb,
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
our pain will never heal until we heal our misplaced sense of identity. And in order to do that, then we have got to retrace our lives beyond our mother's womb, because God said, I formed you, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I knew you before I formed you in your mother's womb. So that you that he's talking about,
Mm-hmm.
that's your identity.
Mm-hmm.
That's your real identity. And so when we came into the earth, it came in and through birth, because we all enter the earth through birth, through something called birth. And we have parents or caretakers that are caring for us, and they change our identity through
Mm-hmm.
their parenting skills or lack of. And so we come knowing who we are, and then we forget. And so our job through this journey on earth is to remember who we are by retracing
Yeah.
our lives beyond our mother's womb, and that
Yes.
you that God is talking about. And
Yes.
that's the magic there. That's when the
Yes.
magic happens, and
Yes.
understand that there is in the mind of God a perfect image of who you are, you know, and that you're loved and you are lovable. And when we understand that, then that there begins our journey to being. I call it our journey to being.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's
Yes.
what you
I
did,
agree.
and that's exactly what you did, Vanessa. Um, you you say my story is no longer about my wounds, mistakes, or previous lifestyles. Those things no longer matter to me. My story is now about being made new and whole while boldly walking in purpose and writing this chapter, knowing that even one person can be set free by my testimony. That's beautiful. So
Yeah.
what do you know for sure about this journey?
I know for sure that although it may not be easy, that God can give you beauty for ashes. And so I love when he says, when thy mother and father forsake you, I will take you up. So there is an assurity there that when you are rejected by your father, or abandoned, rejected by your mother, or rejected by your spouse or whoever, that God brings you close.
Mhm.
And I love that. It wasn't until I gave my life to Christ that I felt that and believed that wholeheartedly. I know that there are others who need to be set free from the thinking that they are not worthy of real love, authentic love. I never saw myself being married. I wanted it, and not to a man. I wanted it, but I just thought it was too far of a reach for me. And so I'm still in awe of what God is doing, you know. And although I am not like completely like it's not that my father wounds have gone away. Like you said, we learn how to recognize them. We learn how to manage them. We learn how to filter what is and what isn't, you know. But the Lord has sent me someone who can help me with that, not with healing me, but he just has a heart for me and understand, like you said, you know, okay, where's that coming from? Where did you hear that? And so, you know, I just love that. I also know that, you know, for me, there are grown women who are 40, 50 years old, 30 years old, and they're still walking around as that wounded 12-year-old rejected, abandoned young lady. But she doesn't have to stay there. And me personally, I love working with the teens because I don't want them to get to 30 and 40 and still having to deal with those issues. So I know that, you know, it's not easy. It is a journey, but there is healing on the other side.
There is. It really is. And so you, do you have a short passage you want to read from your story?
Yes. I said, I was able to gradually grow in forgiveness towards my father because I was able to remove my own hurt from the situation and understand the source of his pain. I was also able to see that he did his best with the tools that he was given. I began to practice the values and principles that he did instill in me at a young age. The soil of my soul was ripe, and he indeed planted good seeds that God did and still is watering. My compassion for him grew because he too had a story, and on the other side of his faults, he was a good person. He was a good father to me, and I loved him. If I had a choice to choose a different father, I would still choose him.
Wow, that's beautiful. Now that's pure forgiveness. That's true forgiveness, and that's freedom for you and freedom for him. And so that is powerful, and that's really what we're about. It's not about what was rewriting a new narrative for our stories. We can't change what happened, but we can heal it, and we can use it as an opportunity to share with others that they can do the same. And I want to congratulate you for being bold, because it's not easy. It's not easy to share your story. There's a lot of shame that goes on with being a fatherless daughter, because you feel like, I don't fit in, I'm a misfit, I'm broken. But we're not broken, we're just wounded, and wounds do heal. And so tell us what you got going on and how people can contact you.
Well, behind the scenes, this is what I'm working on. Because of the pandemic, the word is pivot for the year, right? But I don't want to just use it for the pandemic. People, kids particularly, they're on social media already. They're connected to, you know, the digital platforms. So what I'm doing is I'm working on some virtual workshops that I would like to host. I used to do in-person workshops. We would spend a whole day together and have snacks and food and just really have an amazing time. Music. I'm going to somehow bring that virtually. And I think that it's also nice to do that because you can do the breakout rooms. Mm-hmm. So I will be having past women that I actually interviewed in the past who were fatherless, and have them come and talk to them and do like discussion panels and things like that. So that is in the works. I'm hoping that within like the month of March, that is something that you know, will go forth. But right now, you can just go to my website, mydearbornchild.com, and you can sign up, have your email, send me a message. And if you would like for me to have your child or, you know, be a part of some of the workshops, more than welcome to. And honestly, I'm really just looking forward to connecting with the kids. I'm looking forward to it. So that's what's happening right now.
Well, that's great. And we'll be sure to, of course, post it in our community that what you have going on. And if you send us a flyer, we'll put it on the website, the Fatherless Daughters website, any upcoming events or resources that you have, we'll place them there. And so I want to thank you so much for being a part of this book, this whole book series. Thank you for sharing your story. It takes a lot of courage to stand and tell your story. It does, especially when it's not all happy, flowery stories. But the ending is so wonderful because you were able to grow and to heal beyond your fatherlessness. And this gives hope for everyone else. And so thank you so much for sharing your story. And I look forward to what you're going to be doing next. And I just appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Miss Angela. You know I call you Miss Angela because I'm all about respect. So, but thank you, Miss Angela. I first of all, I'm just so appreciative of just being a part of the Fatherless Daughter Network. Like, I became a part of this, I want to say like almost 2.5, 3 years ago when I went through the course, and it's just amazing. It's just, God has really given you something amazing, and to be able to share it with the rest of us so that we can be able to help others, like, it's just a blessing. And being part of this book, I always wanted to be a part of it. And I was struggling. Honestly, when I submitted this, I was in a deep depression.
Wow.
And I was like, this is not my best writing. I'm being honest. This is not my best writing. This is not my best work. But I'm determined to still push through this pain right now because this has to get out. So I was like, this is bigger than me. So at first I was like, I don't know. But, I'm glad that I can look in the book and see that it's here. I'm glad that I was able to push through.
It's beautiful writing. It really is. And so that, out of your pain became your passion, so, and you do it anyway. That's what I tell people.
Right.
Do it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you so much. And I know this is not our last hearing from you. And so I look forward to more. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Take care.